Hello, friends, and welcome to the third installment of Six Figure Emails. This one is called The Time Compressor, also affectionately known as 6 Feet Under in 7 Years. And what we're going to be talking about today is really something that turned me into a blubbery mess, like this guy from Dawson's Creek. I think his name was James Vanderbeek. If anyone can correct me on that, then I know you were probably a much bigger fan than I was. So feel free to do that or not do that, but this is how it's going to go down. So first we're going to talk about a background on this template. This email really was born in a pool of blubbery tears, as you'll see in just a second. We'll talk about why we use it. So what are the persuasion principles at play? What are we coaching as far as coaching the conversion goes? Why does that work? Why do we essentially write these weird templates to begin with? Where to use it within a funnel or a sequence, and of course, how to use it. So the questions to extract the content, the template itself, and then in the next video after this one, we'll look at a teardown of an example so you could see what it looks like in the wild. Cool, so a little bit of background. There have only been 2 times I legitimately ugly cried in my life. The first was during this scene, which was the last scene in the series finale of a show called 6 Feet Under. Highly recommended if you haven't seen it. But the short version of it and also the spoiler version of it, so just mute me if you haven't seen this yet and you actually have any intention of watching it, is all the main characters that we've been following for years. All of a sudden in this 5-minute montage, we see essentially we compress time of the rest of their lives. So for years or decades, and we watch them turn into old people and essentially die while listening to See It's Breathe Me as the backdrop. So very deep, very emotional, turned me into a blubbery mess. The next one was this song from Lucas Graham called 7 Years before it was extremely overplayed on the radio. The first time I heard it turned me into a blubbery mess. And same thing, the lyrics are essentially telling the story of him going from 7 years old and a young boy relating with his parents to being 80 years old and having grandchildren and dying. And that turned me into an absolute wreck. And it got me thinking of these two. If this scene and this song both turned me into a blubbery mess, and they were both based off of this concept of compressing time, it must be some epically powerful stuff. And what that is this perspective shift, right? It takes you out of the minutia of your current reality and gives you this visceral and acute experience with urgency of seeing your entire life essentially flash before your eyes. And that becomes an extremely potent and powerful motivating force to take action. And then I asked, how can I bottle up the essence of this time compression stuff? And if I can, what marketing challenges can we overcome through it? And how can that shifted perspective give clients that extra incentive to take action? So that's where this is born, why we use it. So these are the problems I really wanted to solve with this concept of time compression. Is there tends to be this impersonality or this anonymity of one-to-many marketing via email, for example, and it makes people feel less accountable or responsible for staying consistent with things they said they want to do. And they say what they want to do when they do things like opting into a lead magnet or a video series or a webinar. These are all actions that say something, but yet they tend to not feel accountable or responsible for staying consistent with it. There's also a sense of them having total, full, complete control of the situation, unlike a one-to-one sales call or a one-to-one demo or a one-to-one in-person sales meeting, where there's more of a fluid exchange between the marketer or the salesperson and the prospect. That doesn't exist in the one-to-many world. And the sense of being in full control and not being held accountable to previous commitments or attuned to the urgency of the situation is absolutely a conversion killer. And those are the things we really want to overcome and what we're going to be leveraging the time compressor to do. So you will note, final minute urgency is the low-hanging fruit. You will always get the last-minute buyers who relate well to the surface level, fear of missing out or the FOMO and the scarcity. That's never going to change. But if we can cut deeper into the non-buying behavior of the other 97%, that's how we really move the needle. And that's why we are going into this adventurous territory by taking concepts like time compression and bringing that into our marketing into final hours or the final days of launch. Cool. So at the end of the day, this is really what we want to accomplish. You must get your prospect intimately aware of his or her role in this exchange. And it really is an exchange, as well as their responsibility to act in line with any previous commitments they've made. So what is this email coaching? It's coaching reciprocity and liking by reminding them that they asked you for something valuable and you delivered, whether that was a demo call, whether a video series, a webinar. They asked to be there and you delivered on it. Urgency. By compressing time, we become subtly aware of the fleeting nature of opportunity, and watching our favorite characters or a person in a song that we just related to age 30 years in a minute and die, we all of a sudden become deeply attuned to this sense of mortality and the urgency that underlies it. Opportunity is fleeting and we just want to capitalize on it. We're coaching consistency with the outcome or benefit they asked you to produce for them, and that could be implicit or explicit. It could be in simply opting into a sequence that promises to deliver a result. We're holding them consistent to those outcomes or benefits they said they want to achieve, and we're shifting the relationship dynamic by not allowing them to hide behind the screen. We're going to hold their feet to the fire and ask them to hold up their end of the bargain because we've already held ours. Now, of course, there's no way to physically and absolutely do this, but we're not looking to control absolutely everybody who reads our emails. We're not trying to control anybody for that matter. We're simply trying to rebalance the scales just enough to really start moving the needle beyond the typical conversion rates we see. Cool. So where would we use the time compressor? I like using this in a closing email sequence, so ideally in the final 12 hours of either a live launch or an evergreen funnel. How to use it. These are the questions that are going to give you the content you need to write the template we're about to look at. So what did your prospect ask you for by signing up to your launch list? So this is where you have to give meaning to the click or the milestone moment. What does it mean that they signed up for this webinar? What does it mean? What are they experiencing? What do they want? What are they trying to overcome? What does it mean that they signed up for, a trial of your software or a demo call? Add meaning. What does it mean? That's really the question you want to keep asking yourself here. What's the magic wand outcome or benefit they asked you to produce? Not the one they want, the one that they asked you to produce for them. The energy of both of those is vastly, vastly different. So stick to the script on this one. Biggest objection or source of disillusionment they have around producing the outcome or achieving the result. Biggest emotional payoff that your offer promises to create, biggest emotional pain point it solves. So this is really the moment of highest tension, not general pain, but what is that acute in the moment tension that they feel that your product can help them overcome? What results, testimonials, or case studies can you point to that prove these things we're talking about? And what's the minimum viable commitment they need to take? They don't need to be married to your product for years. It's not necessarily a final decision. If you have a trial, it could be as simple as try it for 30 days, or go through module 1. If you don't achieve X, you can get a full refund. So whatever that looks like, minimum viable commitment. All right, so the template, this is how it actually goes down. We're going to shift the relationship dynamic right at the beginning. What did they ask you for when they signed up? Just reflect that back. You asked for this. You asked to be here. We are in this exchange. The big juicy outcome they ask you to help produce with your product or service, then overcome the biggest objection, offer the biggest emotional benefit, overcome the biggest emotional pain, that point of highest tension or the moment of highest tension, and then proof elements that really validate all these things that you're talking about, and then just transition with a plea for reasonable reciprocation. They asked you for something, you delivered. Are we doing this or not? Can we actually come together and partner to give you this result or help you overcome that problem? That's what we're really doing. And then the call to action is framed as that minimum viable commitment, something to take away the anxiety of, an extreme commitment of, being married to the product. So whatever that looks like for you, that's what you want to do with the minimum viable commitment. All right, that is the template at a glance. Take some time with that, answer the questions that will elicit the content, and then you can meet me in the next video where we'll look at a walkthrough to see what this looks like in action. All right, I'll see you there.